Well, hello, everybody. My name is Didi Verg, and I'm your host for Talking Hypnosis, brought to you by Hypnothoughts Live. And today I have the very special privilege to be speaking with my co-host, Will Horton. Hey, Will, how you doing?
Doing great. How are you doing?
Excellent, excellent. So let me tell everybody about you, Will, because, well, it's no secret. Will's one of my favorites. But anyway, Will Horton is considered by many to be one of the world's leading neuro-linguistic programming trainers. He's a licensed psychologist, a certified alcohol and drug counselor, and a master hypnotist. Now, because of Will's extensive writing and training in NLP, he was one of the few non-law enforcement people asked to attend the FBI Crisis Hostage Negotiation course at the Academy. He is the founder of the National Federation of Neuro-Linguistic Programming and the creator of several best-selling home study courses in NLP and hypnosis. So we're going to be speaking today. We're actually both going to be speaking on addiction because those are our specialties. But we're going to be speaking today with Will about Hypnoaddictionology.
Right. And I'd like to say hi to everybody here. I'm in beautiful Florida. You're in beautiful Canada. It's a little warmer where I'm at, I think. Again, I'm Dr. Will, and I get the pleasure of talking to somebody I've known, I think, 5 years now, or a little bit more.
No, I'm not. I don't track things in time.
It's been a while. We've known a while. And so let me tell you a little bit about Miss Didi. She's a certified hypnotist in 1998. It means she's either hit her 20-year mark or is coming up on 20 years. And she's a master health practitioner of NLP. She's also a sought-after professional speaker in the field of emotional health and well-being. She's appeared on numerous TV, radio, podcasts. I've interviewed her for a radio show I do. She's passionate about what she does. That's one thing I like so much. And she's passionate about weight loss because she brings a wealth of personal information as well as intellectual information, research information on the subject because she herself has struggled with her weight for the first 30 years of her life. So we commiserate on the fact, one reason I'm so passionate about addictions in general is that's what led me into this field in the first place was an addiction, took away a military career and an acting career. And it's when I learned these certain things that I got the addiction under control. And, here I am. So I'm going to ask her a question. First of all, since this is about Hypnothoughts 2018 in the beautiful desert of Las Vegas. You've been going to Hypnothoughts for how many years now, Miss Didi?
You know what? Again, I'm so bad at tracking things in time, but I think this will be my 4th year. And I'm just disappointed I didn't learn about it earlier because Hypnothoughts really is the best deal and game in town.
Okay, cool. And so this year you're doing we speak for a living, a post-course on Change the Brain with Hypnosis and NLP for weight loss and food addiction.
Right.
And as an addiction person, it's always interesting for me because a lot of people don't realize you can actually use food as it fits every criteria. I'll put on my psychologist hat for the clinical diagnosis of what an addiction is.
That's right.
Food can fit that. And the difference is that I find fascinating. I haven't had a drink of alcohol in over 34 years, right? Hopefully, knock on wood, I'll live the rest of my life and never drink alcohol. But if you happen to have food as an addiction, you have to eat. You have to open that box of addiction a couple of times a day just to survive. Mm-hmm. And so it's an addiction, but it has to be treated much differently than alcohol, drugs, gambling, even sex, if you will. If sex is an addiction, you can live without it. But food, you got to do it. So Tell us about, what got you into being so passionate about food as an addiction and helping people look as slim and beautiful as you are.
Thank you, Will. I guess I would call it an addiction because when we have smokers come into our office, they're at the point where they're so frustrated, they're saying to themselves, I don't even know why I'm doing it while I'm doing it. And that's the feeling I always had with the binging. So every night I would binge and my stomach would be full and I wouldn't be getting any pleasure with it. And I'd be stuffing my face saying, I don't even know why I'm doing this, and keep doing it. So I think that that's a very classic definition for for addiction because it's being driven by the unconscious. We don't know why we're doing it. So years later when I got my habit under control, and then years later when I started working with other people, it was the same story all the time. With every consultation I do in my office, people would come in and I'd say, because I was curious, so I'd say, so you eat, most people binge at night, most of them. So I'd say, so you come home and every night you just eat and you continue to eat. So what do you think's driving that? And they'd be like, well, I don't know. Like, it's unconscious. The triggers are being triggered and it's a pattern that's running in the brain and it's completely unconscious. They don't know if it's because they're stressed, overwhelmed, is it a habit? Now we know that it is an addiction in the brain because they've done brain scans and it's been shown that just like cocaine or heroin, it goes straight to the nucleus accumbens, which is the pleasure centers of the brain. Now I'm not talking regular food, but specifically highly refined sugary carbohydrates with a lot of salt and fat. There's a special formula that our food industry knows a lot about how to specifically get you addicted. And they use this formula all the time. It's called the bliss formula. So we know that this is going straight to the pleasure centers of the brain like drugs, only a little bit slower. So the question is, how do you work with something that somebody has to consume 3 times a day, that every other business on the street offers, and they don't really offer good food, to be quite honest with you. It's a variety store, a 7-Eleven, a McDonald's, so there's not even really that many healthy choices out there. And as you know, Will, when we get hungry, angry, lonely, tired, that's really triggered, right? The halt model. So we have to, we'll discuss the differences because I think we have to treat it differently. And not to mention, it's completely enmeshed in our culture. Our culture equates everything with food. Celebration, hurt, disappointment, love. So first, when you're a baby and you first cry, your first cry is for what? Your milk, your food. When you skin your knee when you're a little child, what's your mom do to soothe you? Oh, it's okay, here's a cookie. It's your birthday. What do? We eat. It's Easter. We eat. It's Christmas. We eat. We eat with the family. It's celebration. It's just anchored in so many ways in our life. And that is like a big Gorgon ball, one of those little balls of elastics that we just have to untangle through hypnosis and NLP. But so tell me you've worked with food addiction as well.
Well, yeah, food addiction and all the other addictions, you hit on something there with, it's in our culture to share food, because for most of millennia, people starved to death. Mm-hmm. Up until 1,000 years ago, the average cause of death was starvation.
Right.
It really was. And, it's only been in the recent millennia that we have enough food. And so the ultimate gift someone would give to someone is to share their bounty. That's where the American Thanksgiving came from, was we'll share, because guess what? In 2 months, we're probably all out of food. So... Yeah. And then with that, so it's built into our DNA, and also in our DNA with a lot of the certain cultures, and even though it's politically correct, act like we're genetically different, but we are, alcohol kept white people alive during a big time in the Middle Ages, because most of the water was contaminated. That's why the plague ran rampant and all the diseases. They didn't understand you don't build downstream from the outhouses. So people would literally do that, drink, and then die. So they drank mead or wine. Mm-hmm. So and it was actually the fluid in that kept people alive.
Because it killed everything?
and they knew, like when you had dysentery and you were literally dying, especially as a little kid, well, they gave them mead because they didn't know it was the water that was killing them, right? So a lot of this gets ingrained in our genetic DNA, sharing the food and doing this. Plus, for millennia with food, much like certain other, what are we called? We're not carnivores and we're not herbivores. We're
omnivores?
Omnivores. Like our dog, they can eat whatever they can eat. It's kind of built into our DNA. When there's food, we eat until we're stuffed. Mm-hmm. Because we don't know when we're going to eat again, because humans are horrible hunters in the wild. Right? We're not that fast. We're not that strong. So when there's bounty, you eat and eat and eat. And you get fat in the summer when there's a lot of food, because you may not eat for 2, 3, 6 weeks in the winter. So a lot of this is in our DNA. And so now for the first time in millennia, or, only the last couple hundred years, again, now there's food everywhere. This was, even when you watch the old movies, the ones that are correct, there's maybe one diner in a town. That was it. Just people didn't have this. So because all this is kind of ingrained, so for treating food as an addiction, and when I say it fits the clinical criteria, one of the big clinical criteria of addiction is you're using it to soothe unrelated things. You're eating not when you're not hungry. Yeah, you're up, like you said, you're hungry, or you're angry, you're tired, you're depressed, you're whatever it is.
Overwhelmed, yeah.
And bam, it gets wired in, and so now that becomes much like when I treat traditional alcohol and drug addiction. It's sort of the same thing. You're having a drink of alcohol to soothe because I had a fight with my wife. Well, a drink won't soothe it, but it will make me feel better.
And maybe forget about it for a while.
Yeah,
because that's what
and it works for a while. It has to do with the neurochemical reactions, the dopamine spike, and then the serotonin rebound that normal people can get, and they level off. They stop. Right. I'm always this, and people that have a food addiction, they've tracked it's the same thing. My wife, she doesn't have a food addiction or any addiction, so she feels like a drink. She has a drink, her brain equalizes. She goes, yeah, that made me feel better, right? Where I'm like, okay, I have a drink, then my brain doesn't rebounds, it goes the other way, and so you're always like this. Same with people with food. A normal person, if they're normal and they don't have the addiction qualities in their brain and they're feeling a little stressed, maybe they do eat a little bit and then, boop, I feel fine. They stop. No, you want more? No, I'm fine. Okay.
Not to mention, we can cause imbalances in our hormones. So if we're always ignoring the satiating hormone that's elicited and overriding it, after a while it becomes inept.
Right.
So so also the habit itself is causing a severe imbalance in the hormones and the things that keep us in check normally.
And you mentioned the bliss factor with food, which a lot of people don't realize. And I didn't know if I really believed it when I read about it until I was in Asia doing a training, and one of my weaknesses is carrot cake. I will admit it, because it hits all those things. It's sugar, it's got the fat, and I just, somehow they knew I liked carrot cake, probably because I talked about it. Like, when I say something like, no food feels as good as being thin feels. No food tastes as good as being thin feels, except carrot cake. Instead of but I was just kidding around. But so we were out to dinner, and they bought me a piece of carrot cake. I said, that's sweet of them.
Yeah.
Right? And I'm worried. So I went and I had a bite, and I went, right?
Right.
And what it was, their bliss point is set more normal.
Oh, it's less sugar.
It has less sugar. It has less fat. And the guy that brought me over there lived in the States for a long time and said, you're used to American desserts.
Right.
And I've heard that from people when we travel, especially Americans and Western Europeans now. Our bliss point is set so high.
Yeah.
And they're always raising it with kids. Let's get some paranoia going, but it's fact, with the sugary cereals, and now they're adding fat to the cereal. So, they're to just make them, for it to taste normal. Mm-hmm. For the rest of the world, they'd go, and that's what I've had people visit me, and they're here from Pakistan or Malaysia, and they go, I can't stand America. No, I don't want a donut. No, I don't want to go. I'll have dinner, but I'm not eating any of your desserts. It's because we've set our bliss point or a set point so high. We're like the athlete that can run 20 miles, except now we take this, we need it for the food.
So the difference between food and alcohol, I was watching listening to your addictions course the other day that I had ordered a while back from you. The fascinating thing is, okay, so we talked about how food is ingrained in culture and everything, and you were explaining some of the beliefs that get formed with addiction, with alcohol. So it's like, oh, you're a real man if you drink, but then so people don't want to stop because unconsciously that means they're not a man anymore. So explain a little bit about how people get embroiled into this identity of drinking.
Well, it's in our culture, I always use the analogy. and the movie will change through time, but it remains, the idea remains the same, which is we condemn it, but we worship it.
Right.
Drunkenness and partying. We condemn it, but we worship it. You know, I'm old enough, the movie I remember the most was Animal House, right? Mm-hmm. Where they're drunk, they're messing, you know, they're nuts. And everybody laughs. It's funny. But if that was your boyfriend acting that way in the frat house, right, you probably wouldn't put up with it that long.
No.
Or if it was your brother that gets thrown out of college because they burn down whatever it is that happens. Or the movie now, the one that was just out a few years ago, was The Hangover. Everybody's laughing and this, and I go, yeah, but would it be funny if that was your brother that went off and got his tooth knocked out and his best man got a tattoo on his forehead? Or would you be going like, no? But so we condemn it, but we laugh at it. So it gets ingrained because when we're growing up, you know, it's those subconscious things that get implanted, especially if you come from a family that has addictions, where, like I said, it's common. Real men drink. Men in this family can handle their alcohol. You know, we drink like men here. Boom. You know, and what I noticed, and this is kind of fun, with every profession I've been around when I was in the service, we were this unit drinks hard and plays hard. Well, we work hard and drink hard. You know, Then I got out for a summer. I was working in steel mill. And it was like, well, real steel workers work hard and play hard, which means we drink hard. Right. So every profession, I'm salesman, I've been in some different professions. I'm like, isn't this interesting? Yeah. Right? And it just, so then like you say now, like I grew up here and real men drink, you know, I'm not saying I'm not going to diagnose other people necessarily, but the only time I saw a lot of fun in my family of origin, everybody was drinking.
Right. So you equated drinking.
When you have a few drinks, it's fun. When you have a few drinks, it's fun. And so it gets embedded that real men drink. To have fun, you drink. You know, it's normal and this and now. And I also used to hear those jokes like, never trust a man that doesn't drink.
Exactly. So what happens when a person stops drinking to their...
So when I was 24 and I decided I got a problem here, I've lost a military career, I've lost an acting career, and then I should quit drinking. So other than the fact I'm not trustworthy, I'm not a real man, and I'll never have fun again.
Right.
It should be easy, you know?
And that's all unconscious, by the way.
Yes.
Just so people understand, those beliefs are running. That's why I asked you to speak about beliefs, because they're all unconscious. So it's creating an internal conflict within you. And it's like, on the one hand, this is what the values mean to you. And on the other hand, you know you have to quit. So the two... So
yeah, and this is the only way, the drinking's the only way you know how to feel better. Right. You have no other coping skills. You know, it's like, I got to drink. And then now that's gone, so...
Oh, shit.
It's like that, you know? And I was just doing a course online, for an addiction treatment program, and we were talking about... it had to do with, there's a guy in long-term treatment. This was back when treatments were like 6 months long. And he'd been in there like 8 weeks, and he was going home on leave, and a pass, whatever you want to call it. Well, he was engaged. Of course, he hadn't seen his fiance for 2 months, and everybody's like, "Oh yeah, you know, he's in his early 20s. He's going to go see his girlfriend." Oh, yeah. He was terrified, right? And everybody's like, "Well, what are you scared of?" It wasn't the group I was running, but I was around it, and he goes, and he had the guts to say in front of everybody. He goes, "Well, but I'm just scared." And they go, "About what? You afraid you're a relapse?" He goes, "No, but, you know, can I have sex sober?" And everybody's like, look, and he's like, "I've never had sex sober." Oh my. And now a real alcoholic could relate. He goes, he started drinking at 12 or 13. Yeah. Right? And well, of course, you might have had sex, so maybe not. You know, I know in my case, probably except for a couple of times in the military where I was physically removed and I couldn't drink, there was probably very few times in my life I wasn't within 24 hours of drinking. Right. So it was always there. So now, and I could relate to this kid's story because it partially mirrored one of mine. So now he's going home. Here's this woman. Obviously he's known her for a couple of years, and they were getting married and they lived together. And he's like, "Will I know how? Oh, poor Will I do this?" And it's like, and of course, so thank God there was enough good people around him that didn't like, because then typically you go, "What the fuck is wrong with you? Just have a beer and, you know, do it." Yeah. You know? And it's like,
supposed to have beer.
Yeah, well, But I
That's
mean, now
the
think,
conflict. Yeah.
yes, yes. And a friend of mine worked in a steel mill, and how these beliefs get so ingrained. And when he quit drinking, you know, and he'd worked in this mill for like 20 years, so he knew everybody and their friends. He goes, you know, after I quit drinking, I realized other than talking about beer or sports or broads, we had nothing in common.
Talk about, right. So you have
So
to
now
lose your whole social circle, right?
Yeah, and so that's one reason I'm a really good big pro 12-step guy. I know it's misunderstood. If people really,
Right.
if people have a clash with it, I think it's because they don't understand it. But he's like, what am I, you know, he can't go to work and talk to his buddies about, you know, I'm a little bit anxious today. You know, my kid's graduating high school, and
Right.
you know, they're going to say, man up. You know,
Right.
let's just grab a couple drinks after work. Well, you know, we'll drink about it. You know,
Can't do it. So okay, so we talked about conflict, the need for parts work or conflict integration. So that's, I mean, bar none. I think that always has to happen no matter what the addiction, and maybe not even just one session, because with foods, there's a conflict with food equals love. There's also, I treat myself to eat, but yet I want to be a healthy eater. So there's so many conflicts created. So what are your top 3 favorite processes to use, whether NLP or hypnotic, other than just parts work therapy?
well, one is reparenting.
Reparenting.
Basically.
Okay, so tell
Where
us about that.
you go back and you look at those early imprints. I don't believe you have to do a big regression. I'm not a big regression guy, to be honest with you. But it's like you go in, because I think we mislearn information.
Sure.
You know, and if you just reframe it that way, if a person's in the right state and you word it right, so you're a little kid and, you know, you're seeing this, you know,
Right.
and all your parents, let's say it's your dad, and I'll use a male example. So the little boy's there, the dad's saying, like, real man, you know, in our family, we do this. You know, did he want his kid to grow up and be an alcoholic?
Right.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
You know, maybe, you know, you could reframe it, you could change it, because again, as you well know, and people that in our field know, your mind doesn't know the difference between a real or a vividly imagined event.
Right,
You can
right.
just go back, and this is the reason I'm not a big regressionist, and rewrite the memory. There is no such thing as an original memory,
Yeah.
right? Because every time you think about it, you change it.
Changes it, yeah.
And we make it worse and worse, so you go back and you rewrite it. That's a big one. Also, creating a compelling future.
Absolutely.
You know,
Ooh.
that like, okay, I'm sober now. Why?
Yeah. What's
I mean,
it going to do
that's-
for me? And why is
I mean-
it important at my deepest core level of my values?
And then with that, how to have fun sober.
Yeah.
How to
Oh,
have fun sober. You know, whatever you're into, can you do it sober? Hunting, fishing, whatever it is, I don't care. Can you do it sober? Because
Right.
they may not have ever done it, right?
Mhm.
And then you and also make that compelling future fun. You know,
Sure.
I always tell the story. I used to love baseball, right? I'd go watch baseball games. After I sobered up, I realized that is the boringest thing in the world.
Yeah.
Sitting there watching a baseball game. But if you're drinking, right, and you're having a beer and you're betting on the game and all this, well, all of a sudden drink is gone. I watch a baseball game and go, this is boring.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, I'd rather go play baseball. I like doing that, but
Yeah.
watching it is right. But you don't know. And one of my favorite sayings lately is, you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
And so you start to, so there's that, creating a compelling future.
Mhm.
So you kind of rewrite history, you do some things, create a compelling future. Of course, remove some guilt, but also create rituals for success.
Okay,
You
so
know,
say more about
gotta-
that, because this is interesting.
Well,
What are rituals for success?
Well, a dear friend of mine, I'll say that because it sounds good. My dear friend Tony Robbins, I like the way he says it. By your rituals, you shall be known. You know, if somebody's in really good shape, right? If they're in really good shape, and let's say they're past their mid-20s, where they just might have the genetic thing
Yeah.
going. But if they're in really good shape, and let's say they're in 40s, you could almost guarantee one of their rituals is they exercise.
Right.
Right? And what I mean by ritual, it becomes a must. If you talk to somebody that exercises, it's like, I really shouldn't work out.
No, they don't want to miss it. It's like torture to miss
When we're
the
in Las
workout.
Vegas for a week, you could guarantee I'm going to be somewhere working out 3 days.
Mm-hmm.
It's a must for me. And people go, well, you could just skip it. You could.
Yeah.
And my comeback is, well, are you going to shower the week you're in Vegas?
Exactly.
Well, of course. Well, to me, it's like showering. It's a ritual. It's a must. So you got to create, in that compelling future, these rituals that will support it. That's one of the reasons that people that don't understand the 12-step program, where else, if you grew up in an addictive household, where else do you learn how to go have fun, how to go be social, how to do this, how to do that, how to get models of not doing it. So it also creates some discipline. There's a lot of people that will go to like AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, or Narcotics Anonymous, or cocaine. I mean, there's an anonymous for everything. And do they go forever? They may, or they may go a lot for the first couple of years because it becomes a different ritual. Like, so after work, I'm gonna go to this meeting.
Instead of going to the bar. Yeah.
Right. It's a different
community.
ritual.
The bottom line is it's community, and in order to keep our dopamine levels up, we need that hit of community, because community and togetherness brings our dopamine up in a natural way. So go ahead. There's a doctor here in Canada, Dr. Vera Tarman, and she says we have to get used to the little simple pleasures that give us the little hits rather than taking the food or the drug that gives us the big hits. So it's taking it from, it's like getting your palate used to not eating sugar. In the beginning, Japanese or Asian sugar tastes so much different, but if you were to live there and get used to it and then come back to North America and try North American sugar, you'd be like, ooh, right? So it's the same idea. We have to get used to the simple pleasures and getting the smaller hits of dopamine, and one of them is community. Community, and 12-step is a community. So it's a nice little dopamine hit.
Well, yeah, and we're either, depends how you look at it, we're either herd or pack animals, and if you take a cow and you separate it from the herd and scare it, it'll try to get back into the middle of the herd, and then its brain chemicals change. And that's what happens when you walk into like a 12-step meeting, right? Right. It changes that. It gives you a model of something to do. And again, like you say, maybe go after work to create that community. And also, after you're sober a while, because when you're in the middle of the addiction, you think everybody does it like this. Right. If you're not drinking that much, it's because you're lying. That's the end of the story. Right? And now all of a sudden you're sober, and I can tell you this, I always self-disclose way too much, but it's what I do. And, when I first sobered up too, I said, I'm not doing theater anymore, I'm not acting, because I was convinced every actor and all the theater shit, they were all crazy. Right? And then I was sober a year, and I believe God works miracles, and I missed it, and somebody that I was close to said, well, if it's supposed to be, something weird will happen. And I get this phone call about, hey, you want to do a play? And I'm like, who the hell are you? How'd you know I was in town? And they're like, well, you still, they described how I look, and they said, that's what we need. And I'm like, okay. So I showed up. I'm like, we'll see. Well, I showed up, and I found out they didn't drink. They didn't party. They were serious actors, right? Of the world. They were like, I could say some names. They come out of Chicago. They were serious actors, right? And I'm like, this is interesting. And so I started doing theater again and getting around. I found out, you know what? Most people don't drink like crazy people. Yeah. When we go have a drink and I'd be sitting there drinking with you, you go home after half a glass of wine, I'm there to like throw me out of the bar. So after I got out of it, right, and got safe, if you will, and understood what was normal or not, I found out I could go back and do those things. And now I have all these other communities. Yes, I'm still active in the 12-step. I got a couple of theater groups I'm involved with, but I had to learn how to do that. It was not in my world. Right.
It wasn't in your worldview or your model of the world, and you had a belief around it. It was kind of like, you can't be an actor and be a non-drinker.
Right.
So.
And in my case, if somebody said, well, what if you hadn't gave up acting and would have got a break when you were young? I said, I would have belushied. That's the way I would describe it. Yeah. Because, so anyway, so there's that. And so one of the reasons I like teaching this hypnoaddictionology, by the way, is not everyone is in the position to go away to treatment, right? Sure. And right now we're still using, and plus treatment has not changed in 50 years. Right. And the traditional treatment model. And, they bring you in, they dry you out, they give some ad hoc therapy, I call it, and then they send you to 12-step meetings and say, go and sin no more. And it doesn't work. to be honest with you, for two reasons. One, if you're in Canada and you're drinking too much, and I say, you need help, come down here to my treatment center in beautiful Venice, Florida, and I bring you down here, and it's sunny, and it's nice, and we treat you like a queen, and you're like, this is great, I love sobriety. Then they put you on a plane, you go back to Canada, it's snowing, it's cold, your significant other's yelling at you, your kids are mad at you, you just got fired from your job.
Right.
Go back to drinking.
Yeah, you're
So
anchored in, yeah.
Yeah, so one of the things, and we've known this in psychology, you actually have better treatment outcomes if you do outpatient therapy or treatment, like IOP it's called, and you stay at home. And as hypnotists, we got little local practices in OPers. People want help, and they may not want to be, and I'll talk about one other thing real quick, they can't go away to treatment, right? So they'll call you up and go, can you help me? Yes. Well, if you don't know how to treat an addiction, you have to treat it differently, right? You have to have a slightly different skill set, right? And the hardest thing for most hypnotists and NLPers to learn is to be able to look somebody in and go, you're full of shit.
Yeah.
And then just keep going. But, so they're going to call because they can't go away to treatment. And if you get them better where they are, statistically, they're much more likely to stay better.
Yeah.
And especially here in the States and Canada, there's certain people that don't want it on their record. They've been treated for an addiction.
Oh, yeah. If you're a police officer or firefighter or in the judicial system.
Or my daughter works or used to work in the security network, right? Where, high-tech
right.
agencies that shall not be named, right? You can't go to treatment. Or in the military.
That's right.
It
has to be anonymous, yeah.
And it will go with you. And a good story real quick. And I say that to people, you're paranoid. Well, the guy I was working with, building this addiction thing, he's not an alcoholic, but he was getting life insurance because, he had to get a new $10 million life policy, right? Yeah. And so the insurance agent said, we got to fill this out. And he goes, well, why does it have this question? Have I ever been treated for addictions? And again, he was oblivious to it before because he hadn't started working in the field and he doesn't have a problem. And he goes, well, that's important. He goes, well, what if I check yes? He goes, well, you'd never get life insurance at that level. Wow. And if you did, we're going to charge you about 30% more. And he goes, so if I did, what would you tell me? He goes, well, honestly, I'd tell you to lie. Because it will go forward, right? Yeah. And whether because I don't care how much they say your records are sealed here in America or Canada.
I've been declined. I've been declined because I reported I had a sore stomach, an aching stomach. And I went to apply for insurance, and it's totally divulged. I couldn't get insurance because they thought I had a bad stomach.
Well, and I was an expert witness for the state of Florida, right? Right. As a psychologist, expert in hypnosis. And against a guy, it's a long story. It was a terrible thing. But as I'm being deposed, the deposition, I'm sitting there, and the guy defending the bad doc says, so, Dr. Horton, I understand you were treated for alcoholism in 1980 by the Veterans Administration. And I went, how the hell do you know that? I was just tickled to death. And what it was, he was trying to scare me.
Okay.
Right? So the judge stopped and said, I'll answer the question, yes, because I also had my book with me. I'm like, I don't have that. I don't have my addiction book handy, so I apologize. But I go, you see my book? But if that would have been a secret, he was letting me know that they might know something about me. Right. And that's the kind of thing. And I was still fascinated. How did he get the information from the Veterans Administration?
It's all out there.
Well, this is America or Canada. You got enough money, you can get any information you want on anybody. So that's another reason people might call up a hypnotist or a local person. A friend of mine's a teacher. He doesn't, when he got treatment, he called me up and goes, hey, who would you go to? I'd say, I was friends with him, so I didn't want to work with him. I said, well, I'd go here, I'd go there, and he started paying, but he does go to 12-step meetings, but he doesn't go in this town or this city. Right. Because all it would take is some parent, and that's another reason you might not want to go away, and he wants to do something different in his career, and he goes, in one hand they'll say, hey, it's great, Didi, you're sober, figure out a way to fire him.
Well, let's talk about that.
Let's talk about your class.
Well, let's talk about one thing is, would you ever go to a marriage counselor that hadn't been married and possibly divorced? So we've both been through the addiction. So clearly, I like to think, if you're going to go to a marriage counselor, I hope they have some experience in both marriage and divorce. But the one question I want to ask you, because I love using this with food, is I love using aversion. Like making people just hate sugary foods, making them repulsed, making them lose their desire for it. So do you use lots of aversion with alcohol?
Yes. Because
good. I'm glad to hear that.
There's nothing wrong with it. Everybody acts like aversion's bad. No, that's
oh my God. Aversion is unbelievable. They lose their desire for sugary foods.
You pay your taxes because you don't want to go to jail.
Exactly.
You don't do it because it makes you feel good. But to tell you how aversion can work to make it a compulsion, I remember there's this kid talking about he had a relapse, and he's like, he goes, well, it was a hot day, and I started thinking about a good cold beer. You know how you picture a big beer, like a good cold mug of beer, and I saw the foam on it and the ice, and it was running down, and he's describing it like this.
This picture, NLP, the picture's
and how good it was, and all I could think about is how good it would taste and how good it would make me feel. And I'm like, well, that's why you drank. It makes sense to me.
Yeah, the picture's right here. It's huge.
And some other guy who wasn't trained in anything, he'd just been sober forever, he goes, son, you got to put the drink in its perspective. He did this.
Turn it black and white.
And no, he just said, and look at that beer. You know what it looks like? A glass of horse piss.
Oh, yeah, I did that.
It looks like a glass of piss.
I did that with somebody with alcohol.
And the kid went like this. He goes, no, trust me. That's when you say you think of a cold beer, I say it's a glass of piss. And the difference, son, I haven't had a drink in 30 years. You drank yesterday.
Right. He was.
And so the kid, and I knew the young kid, now it's been 6 years, he goes, yep, every time I see a beer commercial on TV, I think of horse piss.
Submodalities.
And that's an aversion,
Yeah.
And so, so you use it with food, smoking.
Yeah. It's amazing. It's amazing. It can just shorten the amount of sessions needed by so much. But I always work on the underlying. So let's get them emotionally healthy. Let's give them a replacement behavior for what the need, the food or the alcohol or whatever is getting met. So I think it's important to first build a foundation and then get them to just lose all their desire or be repulsed by either food or alcohol. So I'm glad to hear that you use it with alcohol as well.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, use everything. Some people move toward a goal, but not everybody. Some people only move if you set them on fire, for God's sake, right? And my friend that does sales training says, I can sell you a fire extinguisher if I start a fire.
Right.
And it makes sense to me. It's like, okay, that kind of makes weird sense. So when your course coming up, tell me about how you developed it and how people can get information.
Okay, so I developed it based on, I think there's 10 levels of change we have to work with for weight loss because it's something it's not a digital on or off behavior. It is something we need to consume 3 times a day and even have a snack sometimes. So I have 10 different levels of change. And then of course I teach all the processes that are an absolute must, which is aversion, parts work therapy or conflict integration, creating an identity, which I got from you. It's very important to craft a new identity and a compelling future. So creating a motivating and compelling future. Having a look in your environment. What is it in your environment that's contributing to the habit, right? There are basically 10 levels, and I'm making sure that on each level we work with the people, and I teach each one of those levels in the course. Cool. So it's a pretty in-depth. We did it for one day last year, but I think it was far too overwhelming for people. It was, I think I actually burned the brains. It was just too much information. So this year we've turned it into a 2-day, and it's great because a lot of the people who attended not only were hypnotists, but had wanted to experience the weight loss themselves. And you could just tell by them running through the process, when someone goes through a profound insight or realization, that's like, wow, okay, I get it now. So it was really great for the participants as well. So tell us a little bit more about your course on Hypnoaddictionology, the alcohol and addiction solution. What are you going to be teaching?
Well, it's a 2-day because it's very experiential. I say bring your problems. We can work on them, right? And like you just said, it's like, because it's much more powerful when you're doing it, not just thinking about it, right? This isn't a psychiatric convention where it's all didactic information. We gotta experience it. So I say bring your problems. We'll work on them while they're there. Could be a major addiction, could be minor. Let's do it, right? Because we all have things we need to alter. And I bring a not just the hands-on approach. I bring all the neuroscience with it, and we talk about this, the truth about the 12 steps, why it's so misunderstood, right? And in a nutshell, it was meant to be a bridge back to normal living. People don't understand that, right? You know, I always tell the story. I was teaching a hypnosis class, which is kind of interesting, and I had a fundamentalist preacher there, right? But he was in a hypnosis class, so I knew he was okay. He had
somewhat of an open mind.
But he hated the 12-step program. And I'm like, why? I just wonder,
power.
Well, no, and he's just like, he just had whatever it was. But anyway, one day we're talking about something else, and I go, do you believe in Jesus? He goes, of course. I go, have you been baptized? He goes, yes. So you've been saved.
Right.
And you believe. And I go, one other question, can you read? And he went, yes. So I go, you can read the Bible. He goes, I read it all the time. I said, so you never have to go to church again. You've been saved, you believe, and you can read the Bible. Why would you ever go to church? I go, is that what you do with your congregation? You get them saved, you put them on the path, and you give them a Bible and say, never come back. He goes, no. And I go, well, why do they go to church? And he mentioned what you said, the community, the fellowship. I go, maybe that's what the 12-step program is.
Nice reframe.
And he went, and then I found out he started he encouraged 12-step groups to meet in his church.
Yeah.
Right? And I'm like, interesting. So I talk about what the 12-step is, how we can network with it. You know, we don't recruit, we don't do that. But if somebody wants to go, right, we can do that. So it's a hands-on 2-day training. They're going to get the book. I'm going to give them a couple other bonuses, a couple classes for free because I'm changing my world, so I'm starting to do other things. So yeah, I encourage, like what you said, to bring the problems. Let's work on it. Let's have some fun. We'll experience it together, and then show you. And I spend quite a bit of time on how to market it. Because the skill set, unless you know how to present it, without, in some places, in some states here in America, and I know one of the provinces, Canada, you gotta you gotta massage what you're gonna, how you say what you're doing.
Really? As a hypnotist or?
Yeah, as a hypnotist. You want to call it habit control, not an addiction.
Well, we're not supposed to say all that stuff. Yeah, we're not supposed to.
But you know what?
They're trying to make the word therapy illegal here too.
but I don't like the word therapy. But I've never seen a hypnotist get in trouble for talking about addiction, because I can tell you on the other side, I'm also on the other side as a psychologist. I've worked in the medical field.
And former addicts.
They're like, good for you. Go wherever you can get help. A lot of psychologists don't want to work with addictions.
Right.
And the psychologists I know, they'd love to work with you, but go somewhere to get sober first.
Right.
Because I can't work on, like, if you got...
Catch-22. Yeah, it's like, you need the therapy to get sober, but you need to get sober to get the therapy.
Yeah, and I've known some people that build a pretty good practice. Psychologists refer people to the hypnotist to treat the addiction, as long as the hypnotist now go back to your psychologist.
Right, exactly.
Or your social worker.
Yeah.
Right? And then keep working on it's usually relationship stuff, to be honest with you.
Right.
So that's my course. How do people sign up for your lovely course?
Well, they sign up for both our lovely courses at htplive.net. And you know what we're going to leave you with? Everybody, pick your poison, because Will and I are presenting on the same day. So pick your poison. Like, some people are just drawn to work with hypnosis. Some people, maybe they've experienced it or they've had trauma in their life around alcoholics and really want to help alcoholics. So pick your poison, everybody. Hypnothoughts. htlive.net. And we're both post August 28th and 29th. So sign up right away and get a few of your own issues worked with at the same time.
Yes, and then since we'll be there we're Tuesday, Wednesday.
Yeah, Tuesday, Wednesday.
Right? Maybe like Tuesday night. I know a couple of the other people teaching longer. Right? We're going to try to arrange an extra get together that evening.
Let's get all the addiction people together.
Yeah, and there's other courses going on, so it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah. It'll be fun. So I look forward to seeing you there, Will. Thank you very much.
Do you have your pajamas for the pajama party?
Oh shoot, I didn't even think about that. Anyway, I'm a little shy to wear pajamas in public, but we'll see.
Oh, I'm wearing my Harry Potter robes.
Okay, well, you little wizard, you. Okay, so we'll speak to you soon. Have a good day.
Yeah, have a great one. Bye-bye.
Okay.